In this part, we're going to focus on factor by grouping. So let's take a look. We have 6x squared minus 2x minus 3x plus 1. So if it asks us to factor by grouping, I'm not going to combine like terms. I'm just going to work with what we have. So when you see the direction, the question to ask you to factor by grouping, then what we're going to do is check how many terms we have. 1, 2, 3, 4. So since we have an even amount of terms, what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this into the left side and split this to the right side. So what we're going to do is what we did by factoring GCF. So on the left side, which I underlined in green, we're going to look for a common factor. So the common factor between these two terms, between 6 and 2, is 2. In addition, they both have x, and this one has x in 1 power, so we're going to go with the lowest, which is just x. So when we are factoring and dividing by 2x, my GCF will be outside. 6x squared divided by 2x will be 3x. Negative 2x divided by 2 will be negative 1. Alright, let's focus on the right side. Now, at the moment, there's nothing in common between negative 3x and positive 1. So the only option is that the common factor would be a 1. So when you're doing factoring by grouping, if you see there's no factors right away, then you can safely say that the common factor would be a 1. In which we can do that. We can still work with 1. Now, since we're on the right side, take a look at the first term of the right side. So I repeat, the first term of the right side. Notice how it's a negative. So we're actually going to divide both terms by negative 1. So I'm going to divide negative 3x by negative 1, which would be 3x. Positive 1 divided by negative 1 will be negative 1. Alright, so I finished factoring by GCF. Now let's take a look inside the parenthesis. In order to do factor by grouping, the expression that I just underlined, they have to be exactly the same, meaning same sign if it's positive or negative, same number, same exponent. So 3x here, minus 1. So in the event that they are exactly the same, what we're going to do is that we're going to group 2x minus 1 together. So we're going to group the outside factor, the GCF. So 2x minus 1. Notice how I had minus 1 within the work, so that way I remember that it's going to be a minus 1. I have seen in the past where they forget to write their minus and assume that it's just a positive, so when they're writing in their answer, they write 2x plus 1, which is not correct. So if it's negative 1, write negative 1 or minus 1. If it's positive, then write plus. Because I also seen where some students, they got a positive factor and forgot to write the plus, and then in the answer, they accidentally wrote as a negative number. So they did the opposite, therefore they got the wrong answer. So if your GCF of the right side is negative, write negative. If it's positive, write the plus sign. And then after I group the outside factor, 2x minus 1, I'm just going to write the inside factor, the one in parentheses, just once. And then that's all you have to do. This is our final answer. Now, to review with the inside factor, in order to group the outside, the inside factors, the one inside the parentheses, has to be exactly the same. If they're not, that means you're not finished. There might be a step you forgot to do, say factor out a negative or factor out another number. I have students that when they had different factors, meaning one was positive, one was negative, that means they were not finished. And somehow they group it together when they're not supposed to. So in order to group, the factors that I underlined here has to be exactly the same. If not, you're not finished. That means you need to double check your work if you forgot to do a step. Or you might have to double check if you used the right factor. If not, then fix your work to get the inside factors, so one inside the parentheses, to be exactly the same. If not, you're not finished and you won't have the right answer. In this example, we have negative 20x to the third plus 8x squared, or x to the second power, plus 10x minus 4. So We're going to factor this by grouping. So we have an even amount of terms, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's do the left side first. So the common factor between negative 20 and 8 is 4. In addition, the first term of the left side is a negative, so we're going to divide by negative 4. Another thing is they both have x. Since they both have x, we're going to go with the lowest exponent, which is x squared. So when we're dividing, our GCF will be on the outside, so negative 4x squared. Negative 20x to the third divided by negative 4x squared will be a positive 5x. And then 8x squared divided by negative 4x squared will be negative 2. Now let's work on the right side. So the only thing that's in common between 10x and negative 4 is the 2. Nothing else. So since it's positive, I'm going to write plus 2. Over here, we're going to have 10x divided by 2, which is 5x. And then negative 4 divided by 2, which will be minus 2. Alright. Now, check the inside factor. 5x minus 2, 5x minus 2 is exactly the same. So that means that we can group the outside factor. So negative 4x squared plus 2, and then 5x minus 2. In addition, there's nothing in common between 5x minus 2, which is okay. But let's double check our factors that we grouped together. Notice how 4x squared and the 2, they both have an even number, meaning that they're divisible by 2. So that means we can actually keep going, and we have to keep going because we have to finish factoring all the way. So if we refactor 2, because both of them are divisible by an even number, in addition, the first term is a negative, so we're going to divide by a negative 2. So that means that we need to factor out to 2, so the negative 2 will be on the outside. Negative 4x squared divided by negative 2 would be a positive 2x squared, and then positive 2 divided by negative 2 will be negative 1. I'm still going to have 5x minus 2, but I'm not going to do anything with it because, again, there's nothing in common between 5x and negative 2. So here, I wasn't going to stop because I double checked my factors. The one that I grouped outside, negative 4x squared plus 2, they both have a common factor, which is 2, meaning that they were divisible by 2. Since the first term is negative, we divided both terms by negative 2. So when you divide and factor out, I put the negative 2 outside of parentheses. So my final answer is negative 2 times 2x squared minus 1 times 5x minus 2. So that's our full answer. Let me box that up. So even though we have grouped our factors because 5x minus 2, 5x minus 2 is exactly the same, and we grouped the outside GCF, the negative 4x squared and the 2, even though we grouped them, we have to double check if we can keep going. In this case, we have to because negative 4x squared and positive 2 are divisible by negative 2, and therefore we have a negative 2 outside. So another way to make sure that we have this is to double check if all terms are divisible by a common factor. If so, then take out the common factor and then repeat the process of grouping. Splitting the left side, splitting the right side, finding a common factor, and then group. Just make sure you have your GCF here. And if you didn't take out the GCF in the beginning, just make sure at the very end if you have a common factor, anything that's in common between the two terms within the parenthesis, not just the first parenthesis, but double check on the second parenthesis.